Debunking my own video. Did a video on why Christianity is declining in the West. And we acknowledged in the video that it's not declining all over the world. It's actually growing faster than the global population. But people were very intentional to point out, specifically our Orthodox brothers and sisters, you don't understand. It's growing. It's exploding in the Orthodox world, which is probably true. But someone else reached out, one of my black friends, and he brought something very interesting to my attention. He brought to my attention that according to the data, that it's actually only declining with a very specific demographic. I'm going to tell them who it is in a moment. But that globally it's growing. In Orthodox streams, it seems to be growing. People are saying Catholic streams. And we'll get to the issue with the data in general.
Can I take a guess?
No. Nope. Let's go over this article.
Okay.
Faith among black Americans. Most black worshipers attend predominantly black congregations and see a role of religion in fighting racial injustice, but generational patterns are changing. And so these are two different articles that he dropped. Shout out to our folks in Greece. When you peel away at the data, and we'll link both of these articles, something very interesting comes up, okay? The data is rather shocking. So I'll summarize what we found. This is generally what we found according to these two articles, which we'll link below. White mainline non-evangelical Protestants also continue losing more members than they replace at higher rates than other Protestants. What is mainline? Mainline is woke. What the redeemed Zoomer is trying to redeem.
Really? He's mainline and he's trying to be like...
He's going into the mainline Protestant churches and he's trying to bring them back to orthodoxy because they're all affirming and, you know. So it's the mainline churches that are shrinking, which I already knew that. Black Protestants, 82%, and Jewish Americans, 77%, enjoy the highest retention rates of all religious groups. Similar to the racial and ethnic breakdown of all Americans, the majority of religiously unaffiliated Americans are, you ready for this? The majority of the religiously unaffiliated Americans are you ready for this?
I already know.
65% white.
Women.
White.
Okay.
Just white.
I thought it was me, white women.
No. No. 16% are Hispanic. 8% are Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders. 7% are black. That means that Hispanics, Asian Americans, and black folks are actually the least likely to be a nun. I'm not religious affiliated with anything. They're the least likely, okay? However, atheists and agnostics are more likely than those who identify as nothing in particular to be white.
Huh. Is that adjusted for...
Now, this is what my friend said. This is what my friend said, and I won't tell you guys who it is. He says, this is in no way a gotcha or any type of insensitivity from my end. I hurt for and with my white brothers in the faith that remain, but also realize that white men's pain is not being affirmed in and out of the church.
Whoa.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry, Asian. So they classified, just to backtrack, they classified Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as one and the same. So Asian Americans and 7%. So, okay, think about that for a second. Only 7% of blacks and 8% of Asian Americans don't affiliate with the religion.
Yeah.
That's crazy if you think about it. That means that 90% of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and 90% of black folks identify with a religion. He says, he goes on to say, he says, I frequently hear about the drops in faith as if it was general, when that isn't the reality of the Big C church. It is a reality for white evangelicals.
That makes sense. I feel like out of all the... I feel like I've got like two black folks in my head that deconstructed publicly. And then there's just a bunch of white folks. Like it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Of like,
and I got a theory for why.
Okay.
I got a theory for why.
Now we're talking.
Which potentially could further push the idea that white evangelical Christianity is Christianity. But we all know that that's not true. Christianity is way broader than just what we see in white evangelical circles.
But generally... white folks making up a majority of the United States population, if a lot of them are leading the faith, then overall there is a decline in Christianity in the West.
I got a theory for that as well. Okay. So let me cook. So this is my friend. He says all that by tending to the specific part of the world as opposed to medicating the body could be beneficial. I want to see my white brothers and sisters back. So given that Christianity remains 31 to 32% of the global outcome, the greatest decline in apostasy is in the white community. But Christianity isn't declining, and I would say there is an argument that it is growing. Okay. So I'm going to give you a theory for why I think that may not be happening, and then I'm going to give you a theory for the broader issue. Okay.
Hit me.
Okay, so first of all, let's look at this. It says reasons for leaving childhood religion among unaffiliated Americans, 2016, 2023. You stop believing in the religion's teachings, the religion's negative religious teachings about or treatment of gay and lesbian people. Okay, so that went up to, in 2023, 47%. Your family was never that religious growing up. It is bad for mental health. Okay, so that's increased a lot. Clergy abuse scandals. So that's crazy. 1 out of 3 people said they left because of clergy abuse scandals. And then your church congregation became too focused on politics. So that's also a reason. And so this goes over all the reasons for why people don't affiliate. I think one, the data that's collecting in this regard about the decline of Christianity is actually only in mainline churches, Catholic churches, and bigger denominations, more unified denominations. So I think it's hard to make the absolute statement that Christianity as a whole is declining, because the churches that are declining are the churches that get surveyed. And I would argue that the churches that don't get surveyed are perhaps growing.
Yeah, they're not surveying Rhythm Church.
They're not pulling up to Rhythm Church to figure out why Rhythm Church is declining, because Rhythm Church is exploding.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that there is something to the idea of just how the data is captured, that they're capturing groups that are easy to survey.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's hierarchical structures where I would say that a lot of the churches that are growing, specifically globally, the movements that are growing globally is more of the charismatic Protestant streams. Because you're seeing miracles and wonders and all that sort of stuff outside of the West. In America, I would probably concede that it's probably Orthodox and Catholics that are growing, specifically Orthodox. Huge influx of folks becoming Orthodox.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just you think it's maybe that's the modernization of our culture, of where everything's becoming so fast and techy.
Old things become new. New things become old.
Like, and people are just kind of over the pace of life that we have in our modern culture, and they're like, you know what? I want something different. I want polar opposite. So I want robes.
And it's novelty. There's a novelty to it.
Novelty for sure. It's kind of like a hipster coffee shop in 2012.
Why's your it's like a hipster coffee shop in 2012.
That's crazy.
It's like rock and roll church in 2012.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like Seeker Church in 20. So I'm not saying it's the same. I'm saying it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? It's the opposite.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Like if
it became
all
so
of church,
popular.
yes, if all of church was traditional, and then we go, we're not going to be traditional anymore. We're just going to be casual and seeker friendly. If all of church was fundamentalist, then we become seeker friendly. If all of it, right? So you just do the opposite, and so those movements tend to spur on. That's not to negate or to speak ill of our Orthodox or Catholic folks. Not
at all.
I'm not being disparaging in that sense. But I think it's interesting. Now, the reasons why people leave is interesting, but your point about like why you probably predominantly see white folks deconstructing and leaving, I have a theory on that. But do you want to add anything before I go into my theory?
So my only thought would be, and this we've talked about this before, would be that it could also be somewhat connected to people just not openly not identifying with the faith that their parents had. Whereas, and I feel like as we keep going, we're 8 years since 2016, and as we keep, is that right?
Yes.
8 years, yeah. As we keep going, people get more comfortable with being like, no, I'm not religious. Whereas maybe even in 2016, there were some folks that were like, oh no, I'm good.
Well, the whole like I'm spiritual but not religious thing is, we've been saying that since I was in high school.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I was saying that when I first came to faith, because I didn't want to be viewed as religious, because religious meant
cringe,
Orthodox. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I used to be Christian. Now I'm cool.
No, I used to be Christian. Now I'm cool.
All right, what was your theory though?
So here's my theory. The reason why white evangelicals have deconstructed is because they were late with getting hit with the reality of the complicated nature of American history, specifically the role of segregation, slavery, Jim Crow, racism, and the interconnected nature of that within Christian circles. So then they literally got woke to how complicated and dark aspects of American history is, and how the church at times has been complicit in said history. So when you saw the 2020 stuff, the police injustice and all that sort of stuff,
People started reading books.
White folks started reading books. They didn't know how to reconcile this sort of stuff. Yeah. All of a sudden, and it was like my creator friend that got hit with like the barbaric nature of slavery. And it's like, how are you just learning about this as a 30-year-old man? Like, didn't we talk about how it was different? Like how American chattel slavery and the consequences of that and the most, right? And Jim Crow, how it was so different and so crazy, unlike, you know, slavery in other parts of the world. So I think white hipster Christians, and I'm hyper generalizing right here because this happened in other parts, but people who predominantly are around these like reform circles, what I think is they literally got woke. They got woke and were like, oh man, the church was church bad, right? And instead of like understanding that, yes, it's actually a bit more complicated than that. You know, it's more complicated than that. And I think if you grew up black or Pacific Islander or Asian or Hispanic, you probably understand that it's fairly complicated. And there's some dark history. And you've probably had to have reconciled some of this with regards to your faith being a white man's religion. And you probably have reconciled some of this stuff.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? And so you've had the skills to develop the nuance to think through this and the history and all that sort of stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, we've been known that this stuff's been happening in these communities. We've been known that the consequences of, you know. Yeah. And so I think they had a longer on-ramp. You know,
I think also as we've seen the culture, and we've talked about this in previous videos, as we've seen the culture shift from a neutral or a positive to a neutral to a negative worldview of Christianity, there's also been just the reality that Christianity seems to end up on the wrong side of the popular social issue at the time for the past decade and a half. Right? 15 years of just like,
I mean, not the past decade and a half, for the past several decades.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, just more and more popular. Exactly. Well, I think as Pastor Jeff outlined, is like the 2000s when it became neutral. And it was still like, oh, we should probably vote yes for gay marriage. But it was still kind of like okay to be like, nah. You know what I'm saying? So like, so even as time has progressed, like, yeah, I guess right around Obama's time, as it started to transition, 2008 to 2010. Not that it's related to Obama.
No. I think you got to go further back. I think you're missing it. When you find out that the majority of Christian universities were segregationist, and then they took the hand off this, when the segregation became illegal, all of a sudden these folks became the moral majority. And then the moral conservative right in America were folks that used to be segregationists, and all of a sudden they found a bunch of other cultural war issues to be mad about. Bob Jones University, Jerry Falwell. You find that out as a white evangelical, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Oh, so then you start that, you pull on that thread and everything else falls apart.
So like, what if we are wrong about?
Yeah.
Yes. What if we are wrong
everything.
About transgenderism?
What if we're wrong about right? But if you are coming from a not exclusively non-white evangelical circles, and again, forgive me hypergeneralizing, you're like, oh yeah, we've been known that like white Christians can be racist. We've been known that these things are not right. So you already have that context because you didn't grow up in these spaces with this like honky-dory kumbaya view of Christianity that doesn't have any faults in these circles. I think that's what it comes down to, you know. And so that's my opinion. So I'm curious to hear from
which
what
side
you
of
guys
history
think.
will you be on?
Yeah, and that's a very compelling. Like, do you want to be on the wrong side of history?
And you're like, wait, am I on the wrong side of history? Am I a boomer?
Right.
You know, that's kind of like what's the this is so drastically unrelated, but I kind of had this thought with today's video that just went out, the CERN video. Is like, I wonder if the scientists at CERN just see Stephen Hawking and his like, you know, of like, oh, he's just a boomer. He's just scared of technology.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, that's me debunking my own video, the decline of Christianity in the West. What if there isn't a decline? Or what if the decline is specifically with a specific avatar, and that specific avatar, which is the predominant culture, quote unquote. Though I'd be curious, like what percentage of America is white? 20, okay, so 61%. Yeah. So if you're looking at it that perspective, that would be an answer to it. And again, forgive me for hypergeneralizing, but I think there's a lot of reasons for why the claim that like Christianity is declining is probably not accurate. And so that is me debunking my own premise of my own video. Let me know what y'all think about it. Hey, thank you so much for checking out the video. Comment down below and let me know what you think. And be sure to check out this video that YouTube is recommending just for you. Let me know if they nailed it. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.